Like many people, I've been using AI extensively to write Playwright automation. And like many people, I've experienced drift as a suite gets bigger and bigger. Now, I've used all of the tools like skills, rules, etc., that AI offers to try to inherently control drift, but all of those inherently are just a non-deterministic system being less non-deterministic. We've implemented one technique that has genuinely 10x the quality of our Playwright code. And what that is what I'm going to show you today. So let's get into it. Okay, so in short, it's what I call policy as code. That term largely has existed in security and infra, it turns out, but it's what we started to call it. What it essentially is a massive linting system, but it's like linting on steroids. And what does that mean, right? Linting systems traditionally are very good and effective at things like types not matching or some of these other things, right? Or Playwright not being used correctly in a certain function, but it doesn't control architecture. It doesn't necessarily control standards. It doesn't control rules. And so what our theory is basically, if you take a deterministic script, a deterministic set of rules, and you combine that with all of the non-deterministic, but still super effective ways to constrain AI, such as rules and skills and commands and everything like that, you have much higher output. And the reality is you do. And so what do I mean by this? What we're looking at right here is basically a Playwright suite. I've got a bad repo and I've got a good repo to do for this demo. Now we're using AI to write this Playwright suite. And you can actually see some of this is running right now. That's Codex running. And so what is a policy as code suite? Policy as code suite is essentially just a system that defines largely every possible rule that you have in terms of code standards or practices or architecture for your code base. And this could be as simple as something like no hard-coded locators outside of a constructor, right? And what this system is going to do is it's going to scrape your suite. It's going to then apply those rules against the suite, and it's going to offer you findings. Why is this critically valuable? Why it's critically valuable is because every time you use AI to code something, what you then do immediately is you run your policy as code suite. And what you'll be shocked to find out is how often these moments of drift appear in your code base. And why is it critical to basically catch at that first key moment? It's because the minute that bad code is in your code base, it becomes a pattern that is viewed as basically acceptable by AI going forward because it's in your code. And AI will always I'm not an expert, AI will always prioritize basically a pattern that it finds in your code base that it assumes you want to continue over best practice, unless you like explicitly tell it to do best practice, right? And so this is anything from locators. This is anything from where and how your palms are declared. There's so many things. It's literally, think about the last time you did a PR. Either you did one yourself or you got a PR done of your work. Every piece of feedback can be codified into rules. Like code bases are just massive sets of patterns. And by the way, worth noting, and this is outside of the scope of this video, this applies to like the code base as a whole, right? And we're doing this in, I have another video about agentic engineering. You can check that out. But think about even rules like no test ID should exist in the front end code that does not also have a corresponding POM. No API endpoint should exist in the back end that does not have a representative of an API as an object model. There are so many rules that you can come up with once you do it. And then the really cool thing about this is then running it is actually remarkably easy. So all we're going to do is we'll just go here. We'll switch the tab. So we were doing this. I was just cleaning this up actually. So I was going to possibly post it to GitHub if I can get it all cleaned up. But like, once again, this is very easy to do yourself. So we'll just say run the rule set and against the bad example and report the findings. So we have the rule set. We should run it as the bad example. Ironically, actually, I've been cleaning up the rule set, so I hope it works right now. So I'm going to stop talking and pause for a second. We'll see if it works. Great. And you can see it's starting to come back with findings, right? And we had 214 findings across 7 scanned things. Now, the example I gave, there's around 600 total rules. We have some full code-based rule sets that have thousands of rules. Starter Playwright rule sets can be like a couple hundred rules. In this case, we have around it was 600 rules. Okay, so if we look at the findings, so Playwright standards, 205 fails, dry and duplicate, so it found duplicate locators. Code base mapping, 6 there, most repeated rule hits. page level locators created inside methods instead of changing, right? That's super cool, right? It found bad practices. Now, there is an exception system that's built into this that is super useful, but at the same point, it's one of those areas where you want to be very careful about giving exceptions to AI, because as soon as you introduce an exception system, it tries to make exceptions out of everything. And so you should really not. And if you have an exception system, you have to periodically review it. Generally, also, you have to be careful about false failures. But for the most part, I've been able to prune this down and not have false failures. And I can almost guarantee if I went through this, all of these would be legitimate examples of things that are found. And actually, here's a really cool unmapped front end test IDs, right? It sees that there's test IDs in the front end. And like, how is this 10x the quality of our Playwright, right? How it has 10x the quality of our Playwright is twofold. One is the amount of time a human is having to go through and review the sort of AI's work exponentially less. You don't have to worry about the standards of the code anymore. You simply just have to figure out, did it do what you want? Is it asserting what you want? Stuff like that. Which, as a complete side note, you can even have rules around the number of assertions in a test. There's so many things you can do. Then the other is, frankly, there are so many times, even as a human, you think you covered everything that you just didn't. And you'll start applying this in your sort of process. You'll be stunned the quality of the Playwright code that starts to happen because AI has this deterministic rule set. Okay, so how do you actually apply this yourself, right? So what we have is essentially a library here. It has an engine that basically does all of the scraping and then gathers the evidence. You have basically your rule set. It has all your rules. You have your reporters and so forth. If you already have a policy as code rule set, the cool thing is as simple as basically just pulling down kind of a template like this, updating it. The problem is every suite's different. So like this is worth noting. This policy as code rule set will not apply 100% to your suite. Maybe you have certain ways you guys handle fixtures that's different. Maybe you have a different model that's more data driven instead of page object. The key is that I actually would advocate you build your own based on your practices. But I would also say your rule set is going to end up being exponentially bigger than you think it could or should be. There is a shocking number of decisions that AI in theory could make that you can actually turn into patterns. And yeah, if I can get this up on GitHub, which no guarantees I'll be able to in the next few days, but I'll try, go ahead, you can pull it down, run this rule set against your code base. If not, I would just advocate, you could even take this transcript, for example, and give it to AI and say, hey, recreate this in my code base, and it would spit out something like this in 20 minutes. Yeah, this is genuinely one of the most impactful things that I have found with AI in the last 6 months. And yeah, hope you enjoy it and have any feedback. If you like the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, reach out. And with that, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.